There are 5 major warnings that we're going to deal with as the thing unfolds. The danger of drifting in chapter 2, that'll be next session. The danger of disobedience in chapter 3. Progress, the need for progress toward maturity in chapter 5 through 6:20. And that's the one that has this passage in it that confuses everybody. It has 16 different variations of that, and we'll deal with the 3 primary ones and unsort that for you when we get there. Danger of willful sin in chapter 10, and the warning against indifference in chapter 12. 5 key warnings. My main point at this stage is to realize the unity of these. These aren't little isolated trouble things. All 5 warnings are a unit. They go together and complement each other. Each builds upon the other. Once you understand that, it changes your perspective. Each intensifies until the 5th capstone. They all build up to that 5th one. So we're going to study that as we go then. The writer relies heavily on Israel's exodus as an example for individual Christians. The exodus was a failure. The entire generation, except for 2, didn't inherit. They were saved out of Egypt, but they didn't inherit. That's the lesson that the writer is going to hammer away on in his letter. That's not the only lesson. The Exodus, there was a redeemed people. They failed to heed God's instruction and was judged for its disobedience. And the implication by the writer is that's true of the Christian also. He can not lose his salvation, but he can lose his inheritance. So all these were written to the believers. They do not represent any chance of a loss to the past aspect of salvation. Being believers, they are justified. Justification is behind them. That's not an issue in this letter. The eternal security of the believer is thus established. The warnings admonish believers to press on and obtain all that God has promised to the faithful overcomer. This is all about overcoming. It's all about persevering. It's not about losing your justification. The warnings represent a very real possibility of the loss of privileges or rewards that will be offered to the believer and revealed at the judgment seat of Christ. All of us as believers are looking forward to the rapture. What's the very next event after the rapture? Judgment seat of Christ. And we'll all stand there. And we'll have an opportunity to be rewarded or to suffer loss. Not the loss of our salvation. No. Just because when you are justified, you've got your passport stamped for access to heaven. Access to a hotel does not mean you inherit the hotel, by the way. Okay? So, to whom is it written? The original recipients, as I say, were Christians. Each warning is going to substantiate the fact that they're Christians that it's dealing with. And the correct interpretation of this book hangs on the answer to one question. Were the people addressed believers or unbelievers? Saved, unsaved, or half-saved? Being facetious here. That's the whole key that'll be challenged all the way. We'll accept that challenge all the way through. 24 times, the author includes himself in the warnings admonition. Was the author saved? I think so. He's not sweating his being saved in the sense of justification. He is sweating his sanctification. And we'll talk about that. And does God urge, in chapter 10, he's going to urge to hold fast to your profession. Would God urge an unconverted, half-saved professor to hold fast to his false profession? Obviously not. That just dramatizes what I'm saying. Why the warnings then? Well, because God, in his love and mercy, saw fit to move the author of the Hebrews to warn his readers. God moved the writer to warn you of these 5 warnings. The author himself loved the recipients enough to warn them of impending danger. This is a love epistle. It's a stern one, but it's a love epistle. God wanted the future readers also to understand the grave danger that accompanies apostasy. We need to understand that. What's at stake? What are these believers going to lose, forfeit, or suffer? Not salvation. John 10, we went through that when we went to the book of Romans, Romans 8. John 10, no man is able to pluck them out of my hand. My Father's greater than all. No man can pluck them out of my Father's hand. And as I like to, in the spirit of Walter Martin, suggest that if you can lose your salvation, then I have a new name for God. Butterfingers. I don't know if Walter really said that or not, but it sounds like Walter. Rewards are we talking about? Rewards of the judgment seat of Christ is the entire issue throughout this whole thing, and that makes it very important to every one of us in this room, because most of us probably have a very incomplete perspective of what the kingdom is really going to be all about. We cannot escape this by applying it to others. The burden of Hebrews is not the rescuing of sinners from hell, but it's the bringing of sons to glory. People who are saved to inheritance. That's what it's all about.